If healthier options cost more, aren't available, or don't fit into how we actually live, then what real choice do we have? Our conversation with Riana reveals how deeply personal food is. And that's why we can't just talk about what we eat. We have to talk about who controls what's available and why better options aren't reaching more people.
And you think that if people want healthier options, companies would just make them, but it's not that simple. Behind every product on the shelf, there's an entire system of bottlenecks, costs, and gatekeepers deciding what actually makes it to consumers, what actually hits your shelves. If you're invested in broad-based mutual funds, there is a good chance you're also invested in profiting from companies that produce and distribute unhealthy foods that negatively impact our communities. Values-aligned investing asks us to examine that the same way we might check nutrition labels or count calories, because like it or not, we're part of this system, not just as consumers, but as investors too. At least for me, I think it's difficult for people to, one, keep track of it all, because it's really difficult to understand without the expertise. But there also just seems to be a lot of conflicting information. You know, like when we talk about financial literacy and how prevalent that is, I would argue that nutritional literacy is probably right up there.
Yeah.
Because every time you hear something, it's almost like you just turn a different channel, or you watch the news and they're saying, oh, actually that thing is good for you. So people, after a while, I think just get a little bit more confused.
Yeah, everything causes cancer, but everything also heals cancer in
Yeah.
moderation, or
But not only that in food, we also have to think about like nutrigenetics or nutrition genetics, right? A lot of the ways that our genes are expressed in different cultures are affected by food in different ways. For example, 70% almost of the world is lactose intolerant. I think people have started to like hear more about this and know this. Like when you have like a one size fits all approach to like WIC, to like how grocery stores are supplied, to how the nutrition plate, the sort of USDA nutrition plate is recommended at schools, this really affects like long-term health, right? So you now have students and their parents and their grandparents building up inflammation just from like going to school because they're consuming things that their bodies weren't used to a few hundred years ago or even 10 years ago. It's surprisingly unhealthy. A lot of the foods that are made in the US use like highly processed oils that like change a lot at certain temperatures. And so our bodies are taking on a load with the everyday foods and the everyday styles of cooking that have led to increased rates in like breast cancers and lung cancers and heart disease and
diabetes, all the things.
But even in like things that we are in, like fertility and fibroids and other things, and there are women that are starting to realize, oh, I can increase fertility if I start changing my stress in my diet, right? Or if I start eating in ways that my families ate before they came here. And I think that's really important for us to break through to, but it's challenging because Black people own 1.4% of like the total land here. I mean, we need to be vertically integrated in everything from farm to grocery to have a little bit more impact and like care a little bit more about us, because you're not able to cook and buy fresh.
Correct.
Or afford to cook and buy fresh every single day. In the ways that help your body thrive and process more healthily, right?
I think the part that is equal parts heartbreaking and interesting for us is like we're having this conversation about food and food systems, but I don't think a lot of people realize that they're actually invested in the companies that actually produce and distribute these products. And so in many ways, we are funding and contributing to the illnesses and the chronic sickness that we see in our own communities. And I think, I don't know, is that our fault? I'm not expecting you to answer that question, but I think we at least want to encourage people to have the conversation, to dig a little bit deeper, and to be able to understand the role that they play, not just as consumers and being mindful of the food that we put into our bodies, but to be a little bit more mindful of what we are essentially contributing to, what we're invested in our retirement accounts, because these are the funds that are being used to do all of the things that you're saying are actually doing a lot of harm.